this story follows a young man who realizes that real achievement isn't measured by school results or the expectations of society, but by the courage to trust his own inner voice. It shows us that even setbacks in education can't stop you from succeeding, as long as you discover and follow your true passion. So stay with us till the end. The auditorium roared with applause as David's name was called, yet he felt nothing inside. Standing on the stage with a certificate in his hand, he forced a smile while his classmates cheered. His father's eyes shone with pride from the front row, but David's own heart was silent, almost numb. Everyone believed he was walking the golden path to becoming a brilliant doctor, the dream every parent in his community admired. But what no one knew was that it wasn't his dream at all. It was borrowed, a dream planted in his mind before he even knew what dreams were. From the time he was a child, David had been told what success should look like. Doctors are respected. Doctors live with dignity. Doctors never worry about the future, his father repeated like scripture. David, eager to please, never questioned it. He studied long nights, aced his exams, and carried the weight of expectations like a soldier marching toward a battle he never chose. On the outside, he was the perfect son, disciplined, focused, and obedient. On the inside, he was lost, living a story written by someone else. Every morning, when David sat in lectures surrounded by charts of anatomy and books of biology, his mind drifted elsewhere. He would find himself sketching lines of poetry in the margins of his notes or tapping rhythms against the desk, small signs of a passion he dared not confess. Yet, he buried those sparks deep within, afraid of the disappointment in his father's eyes, afraid of the whispers of relatives who would call him reckless. But no matter how hard he tried to silence it, the quiet voice inside him kept growing louder. This is not your path, David. You were meant for something else. Standing on that stage with the applause echoing around him, David realized a painful truth: the world was celebrating him, but he wasn't celebrating himself. He was winning battles in a war that didn't belong to him. Nights were the hardest for David. The applause of the day would fade, the noise of friends and family would quiet, and he would be left alone with his thoughts. The heavy medical books sat on his desk like chains, their pages demanding attention, but his eyes often drifted to the empty notebook beside them, the one where he secretly wrote lyrics and stories no one had ever read. In those stolen moments of writing, he felt a sense of freedom, a taste of something pure and alive. Yet, the guilt was crushing. Each time he closed that notebook, he felt as though he was betraying his family's sacrifices, betraying the dream they had built for him. The struggle grew sharper as he progressed in his studies. Professors praised his discipline, classmates admired his knowledge, but none of it filled the hollow space inside. Every lecture hall felt like a cage, and every exam, no matter how well he performed, felt like a lock tightening around his spirit. He lived in two worlds, one of duty and one of desire, and the war between them drained his soul. One afternoon, on his way home, David paused by a park where a street musician was playing the guitar. The man's voice carried a raw power, and the passion in every chord seemed to pierce through David's carefully built walls. Strangers stopped to listen, their faces softening with emotion, as if the music touched something deep within them. David stood frozen, a lump forming in his throat. It wasn't the perfection of the performance that moved him, it was the authenticity, the fearless expression of someone living his truth. For the first time, David admitted to himself the secret he had buried for years: this wasn't just admiration, it was longing. As he walked away, his chest felt heavy. He knew what his heart wanted, yet he also knew the price of choosing it. Could he really disappoint the people who had sacrificed everything for him? The silent struggle raged louder than ever. For the first time, David realized that living a borrowed dream might be safe, but it was slowly destroying him from within. Days turned into weeks, and the battle inside David became unbearable. He walked through the corridors of his university with the look of a model student, but inside he was restless, torn between expectation and truth. Every lecture he attended felt heavier, every smile he forced seemed emptier. He knew he couldn't keep living like this, one foot on the path his parents built, and the other on the fragile ground of his hidden passion. The weight of silence was suffocating him. One evening, David gathered the courage to sit with his parents at the dining table. His hands trembled, his throat dry, but his heart was louder than his fear. "I need to tell you something," he began, his voice low but firm. His parents looked up, expecting another report of his academic success. Instead, David revealed the truth he had buried for years, that medicine was not his calling, that every lecture drained his soul, and that his real passion was music and writing. The words spilled out like a storm he could no longer contain. At first, silence filled the room. Then came the disappointment. His father's face darkened, his mother's eyes welled with disbelief. "After everything we've done for you, this is what you say?" His father's voice cut like a blade. David's heart ached, but he did not retreat. For the first time in his life, he wasn't speaking for approval, he was speaking for himself. "I love you both," David said softly, "but I can't keep living someone else's dream. If I do, I'll lose myself completely." His words hung in the air, fragile yet unshakable. His parents left the table without another word, leaving David alone in the silence. Though rejection burned deep, he felt strangely free. He had finally stood for his truth. That night, David realized that courage is not the absence of fear but the decision to act despite it. Approval may be comforting, but authenticity is life itself. He had taken the first painful step toward building his own path, one that might be uncertain, but was finally his. The storm in David's life did not clear overnight. His father's silence cut deeper than any words, and his mother's tears weighed heavily on his heart. Relatives whispered that he had thrown away a bright future for a foolish dream. Yet, despite the judgment and loneliness, David felt an unfamiliar strength rising within him, the strength of someone finally walking his own road. For years, he had worn chains of expectation, but now, even in the face of rejection, he felt the first taste of freedom. He began humbly, with late nights in his room turning lyrics into songs, and afternoons spent playing guitar at small cafes. The audiences were small, sometimes just a handful of strangers sipping coffee, but those strangers listened. And when they applauded, it was not out of formality or family pride, it was genuine. Every note, every word, carried his soul, and the connection he felt with his listeners was something no certificate had ever given him. Opportunities came slowly, but they came. A video of his performance went viral, and messages poured in from people thanking him for giving voice to feelings they couldn't express. For the first time, David realized that his dream had value, not just for himself, but for others too. His passion was no longer a secret hobby, it was a gift he was meant to share. Time, patience, and persistence worked their quiet magic. His parents, though resistant at first, began to see the fire in his eyes. They saw a son who, instead of living safely in shadows, was shining in his truth. And though they may never fully understand his choice, they finally understood his happiness. Years later, David stood under the lights of a crowded stage, guitar in hand, as thousands of voices sang his lyrics back to him. In that moment, he felt the weight of every sacrifice, every rejection, every lonely night, and he knew it was worth it. He had not borrowed a dream. He had built his own path. And that, he realized, was the truest success a person could ever claim.